From the massive bowhead whale to microscopic bacteria, these are the organisms that break the record when it comes to having the longest lifespans. Hi, I'm Emmerson. I'm a docent at the Slater Museum of Natural History. Today I'll be introducing you to a number of plants, animals, and even bacteria that live remarkably long lives. You may have already heard of popular examples of this phenomenon, such as the giant tortoise or the immortal jellyfish. But today I'd like to share with you some facts you probably didn't know about the oldest living creatures and their secret to a long life. Why do things die? Death is a natural part of life that involves the gradual degradation of cells. All cells age, and when cells are no longer able to duplicate, cell and body growth stops entirely, and eventually cell death occurs. But animals in the wild are more likely to die from disease or a predator before dying of old age. Some organisms are able to overcome these challenges to live much longer than others. For example, the rough-eyed rockfish, which can be found right here in Washington State, can live to be up to 140 years old. Almost all rockfish lead unusually long lives, but this one has been known to live up to 205 years, making it one of the longest-lived fish species on the planet. Speaking of fish, Greenland sharks can also live anywhere between 272 and 500 years, making them among the oldest living vertebrates to exist on Earth. Both of these fish dwell in deep waters, keeping them from being exposed to UVB light that can lead to cells aging, and they mature very slowly with low metabolism. Old age and size are advantageous for fish. Both will allow for more opportunities to produce larger quantities of healthy offspring throughout their lives. Colonial animals such as coral polyps and other sea-dwelling organisms like an ocean quahog can live for centuries or even millennia using similar tactics. You may have heard that lobsters are able to live forever. Is this true? Well, sort of. Lobsters are often thought to be biologically immortal because of a protein known as telomerase in their DNA that prevents senescence, a process that most organisms undergo as their cells deteriorate with age. Lobsters will never stop growing, even after reaching sexual maturity, and they can even regenerate limbs if they lose them. This difference in size does come with a price, however. Lobsters achieve their growth by molting their shells. This process becomes increasingly taxing as the lobster's body grows, until it eventually becomes too much for their bodies to handle, or they fall prey to illness or a predator. So in short, while they could potentially live a very long time under the right circumstances, lobsters are indeed still mortal, like us. The bowhead whale, which is currently considered the longest living mammal, has been reported to live over 200 years. The bowhead's smaller cousin, the minke whale, has only been known to live up to 50 years, suggesting the biggest whales, having more than 1,000 times more cells than a human, has somehow evolved as to resist the effects of cancer and aging. Even though being big generally means you'll have a better chance at survival, you don't have to be big in order to live a long time. A planarian flatworm has the capacity to regenerate indefinitely, either through sexual or asexual means, and is only able to be viewed when under a microscope. How is it able to do this? Well, if we think back to our lobsters, whose life is potentially due to the telomerase in their DNA, flatworms create a nearly endless supply of this protein, either through reproduction or fission, when cells split apart to create new cells. Planarian species using this method have been observed existing even after 15 years. If this process were to continue, one might just live forever. Have you ever heard of the olm? If you haven't, you're probably not the only one, since they're hardly ever seen above ground. Olms are a type of aquatic salamander closely related to axolotls, who live in subterranean caves in only a handful of places in Eastern Europe. Living underground their whole lives has caused a thin membrane to grow over their eyes, effectively making them blind. They're so weird-looking that cavers have referred to them as baby dragons as early as the 1600s. Adding to the mystery of these amphibians, olms have been known to live for over a century. Females typically breed every 12 years or so, and her eggs can take anywhere between 86 and 140 days to develop, depending on the temperature. The crazy part is, an olm can reproduce 2 different ways, also dependent on temperature, by either laying eggs or giving birth to live young. A mother olm can lay up to 70 eggs, but can usually only produce 2 larvae when giving live birth. A lot still isn't known about these guys, and scientists are still watching them closely to learn about olms and how they grow. And it's not just animals who live long lives. It's a well-known fact that plants like the bonsai tree can live so long that it needs to be passed down through many generations. But one plant stands out above them all. specifically a certain tree. You may have heard the name of the bristlecone pine floating around, and for good reason. The first bristlecone pine, also known as the Methuselah tree, is thought to have started growing over 5,000 years ago. While they may seem beaten up on the surface, on a cellular level they appear to be much younger. Scientists who study the tree believe that this is due to meristems. Inside these pieces of root are home to populations of stem cells, which can generate new growth for the tree, even after thousands of years, keeping it young and healthy. It is also speculated that slower cell division is the secret to this tree's longevity, as every time a cell divides, it runs the risk of mutation. By keeping what is described as a backup genome in the form of these stem cells is likely what contributes to such a long life. That's it for today. I hope you had fun and maybe learned something new while you were at it. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and stay curious.